Greetings once again, YouTube Pipe community. It's Peter Piper, the True Light. I'm saddened to hear that at least one member of our YouTube Pipe community, which stretches across the globe, has contracted the COVID-19 virus. And I'm, of course, speaking of Stonehenge Minstrel. He commented in my last video that he is laying in bed and he's enjoyed my first reading of Atlas Shrugged. And I just want you to keep Stonehenge in your thoughts and prayers as we navigate this strange happening on a global scale that's unprecedented in our lifetime, I think. I can't remember another event other than 9/11 that has affected us on such a global scale, as well as each and every life on the planet. It's devastating. It saddens me. At the same time, I pray that you all stay safe. Haven't been out of my house in about 3 days. I went shopping a few days ago. It was crowded, and where I am, the virus hasn't propagated to any significant degree where I would feel that I had the probability of being infected. However, the precautions I plan to take is I plan on getting some masks. I think that if I'm able to obtain them, I'm going to wear a disposable mask each time I go out in public, and I'm going to wear gloves. I have a pair of leather gloves, and when I come back from whatever I'm doing out in the public, I'm going to wipe them down with disinfectant wipes. I hope that is sufficient. Continuing to work at home. I work in the defense industry, working on a military contract, and our company is continuing to conduct business as much as possible. People that have to go to work in my company, whether it's manufacturing or any type of laboratory work that's necessary, have to go in. And luckily, I do not have work that requires me to be on site. So, working at home, and just going to try to ride this out as best I can. And that's about all I can think about on that particular front. So it's affected our community, and sooner or later, I think that it'll affect more of us. My son works, he's 17, he works at a fast food restaurant, and I think that they are restricting the consumers to only come through the drive-through, and hopefully everyone that he's working with is not infected, because if he comes home with it, he's going to infect our household. I'd almost like to encourage him to just stay at home for the most part. So, given that, today I've been smoking my Peterson XL315 rusticated system pipe, and I've switched off from the Irish cask, being St. Patrick's Day, and now I'm smoking some Dobie's Four Square Circles, and they are a roll cake type of tobacco. I'll show you one. There we go. It's a coin type of tobacco rolled up around a Latakia core. Really good tobacco. I think it's Virginia and Latakia. Not sure if there's anything else in there. And any kind of, whether it's cake, flake, or coin type of tobacco like that, I like to rub it out and let it dry out on a tray for a period of time. I don't like to just jam the thing in there and constantly try to keep it lit, because I think once you do that, if you like do the fold and pack method, it's too moist for me. I can't stand having to constantly relight it. Relighting dry tobacco is hard enough, and but anyway, um, I'm going to do another reading from Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, and this reading is dedicated to my good friend and subscriber Stonehenge Minstrel. Excuse me, Stonehenge Minstrel, over in the United Kingdom. Once again, he's sick with COVID-19, and he says he enjoys listening to audiobooks, so this reading will be dedicated to him. And without further ado, we'll go back to where we left off with, and I'm going to wear my glasses this time so that my reading is a little less staccato than it was before. I was a little bit strained. Chalmers refilled his glass. The car was rocking as the glassware tinkled faintly on the shelves of the bar. The patches of starlit sky in the windows kept swaying jerkily, and it seemed as if the stars were tinkling against one another. They could see nothing beyond the glass bay of the observation window at the end of the car, except the small halos of red and green lanterns marking the rear of the train, and a brief stretch of rail running away from them into the darkness. A wall of rock was racing the train, and the stars dipped occasionally into a sudden break of outlined high above them the peaks of the mountains of Colorado. Mountains, said Gilbert Worthing with satisfaction. It is a spectacle of this kind that makes one feel the insignificance of man. What is this presumptuous little bit of rail with which crude materialists are so proud of building, compared to that eternal grandeur? No more than the basting thread of a seamstress on the hem of a garment of nature. If a single one of those granite giants chose to crumble, it would annihilate this train. Why should it choose to crumble? Asked Laura Bradford, without any particular interest. I think this damn train is going slower, said Kip Chalmers. Those bastards are slowing down, in spite of what I told them. Well, it's the mountains, you know, said Lester Tuck. Mountains be damned, Lester. What day is this? With all those damn changes of time, I can't tell which. It's May 27th, sighed Lester Tuck. It's May 28th, said Gilbert Keith Worthing, glancing at his watch. It is now 12 minutes past midnight. Jesus, cried Chalmers. Then the rally is today? Yep, said Lester Tuck. We won't make it. The train gave a sharper lurch, knocking the glass out of his hand. The thin sound of its crash against the floor mixed with the screech of the wheel flanges tearing against the rail of a sharp curve. I say, said Gilbert Keith Worthing nervously, are your railroads safe? Hell yes, said Kip Chalmers. We've got many rules, regulations, and controls that those bastards wouldn't dare not be safe. Lester, how far are we now? What's the next stop? There won't be any stop till Salt Lake City. I mean, what's the next station? Lester Tuck produced a soiled map, which he had been consulting every few minutes since nightfall. Winston, he said. Winston, Colorado. Kip Chalmers reached for another glass. Tinky Holloway said that Wesley said that if you don't win this election, you're through, said Laura Bradford. She sat sprawled in her chair, looking past Chalmers, studying her own face in the mirror of the wall in the lounge. She was bored, and it amused her to needle his impotent anger. Oh, did he? Uh-huh. Wesley doesn't want what's his name, whoever is running against you, to get into the legislature. If you don't win, Wesley will be sore as hell, Tinky said. Damn that bastard. He'd better watch his own neck. Oh, I don't know. Wesley likes him very much, she added. Tinky Holloway wouldn't allow some miserable train to make him miss an important meeting. They wouldn't dare to hold him up. Kip Chalmers sat staring at his glass. I'm going to have the government seize all the railroads, he said, his voice low. Really, said Gilbert Keith Worthing. I don't see why you haven't done it long ago. This is the only country on earth backward enough to permit private ownership of railroads. Well, we're catching up with you, said Kip Chalmers. Your country is so incredibly naive. It's such an anachronism. All that talk about liberty and human rights. I haven't heard it since the days of the great-grandfather. It's nothing but a verbal luxury of the rich. After all, it doesn't make any difference to the poor whether their livelihood is at the mercy of an industrialist or a bureaucrat. The day of the industrialists is over. This is the day of the jolt, felt as if the air within the car smashed them forward, while the floor stopped under their feet. Kip Chalmers was flung down to the carpet. Gilbert Keith Worthing was thrown across the tabletop. The lights blasted out. Glasses crashed off the shelves. The steel of the walls screamed as if about to rip open, while a long-distant thud went like a convulsion through the wheels of the train. When he raised his head, Chalmers saw that the car stood intact and still. He heard the moans of his companions and the first shriek of Laura Bradford's hysterics. He crawled along the floor to the doorway, wrenched it open, and tumbled down the steps. Far ahead, on the side of a curve, he saw moving flashlights and the red glow at a spot where the engine had no place to be. He stumbled through the darkness, bumping into half-clothed figures that waved the futile little flares of matches. Somewhere along the line he saw a man with a flashlight and seized his arm. It was the conductor. What happened? Gasped Chalmers. Split rail, the conductor answered impassively. The engine went off track. Off? On its side. Anybody killed? No, the engineer's all right. The fireman's hurt. Split rail? What do you mean split rail? The conductor's face had an odd look. It was grim, accusing, and closed. "Rail wears out, Mr. Chalmers," he answered with a strange kind of emphasis, "particularly on curves." "Didn't you know that it was worn out?" "We knew." "Well, why didn't you have it replaced?" "It was going to be replaced, but Mr. Lucky canceled that." "Who is Mr. Lucky?" "The man who is now our operating vice president." Chalmers wondered why the conductor seemed to look at him as if something about the catastrophe was his fault. "Well, well, aren't you going to put the engine back on track?" "That engine's never going to be put back on track from the looks of it." "But it's got to move us." "It can't." Beyond the few moving flares and the dulled sounds of screams, Chalmers sensed suddenly, not wanting to look at it, the black immensity of the mountains, the silence of the hundreds of uninhabited miles, and the precarious strip of a ledge hanging between a wall of rock and an abyss. He gripped the conductor's arm tighter. "But what are we going to do?" "The engineer's gone to call Winston." "Call? How?" "There's a phone a couple of miles down the track." "Will they get us out of here?" "They will." But then his mind made connection with the past and the future, and his voice rose to a scream for the first time. "How long will we have to wait?" "I don't know," said the conductor. He threw Chalmers' hand off his arm and walked away. The night operator at Winston Station listened to the phone message, dropped the receiver, and raced up the stairs to shake the station agent out of bed. The station agent was a husky, surly drifter who had been assigned to the job 10 days ago by order of the new division superintendent. He stumbled dazedly to his feet, but he was knocked awake when the operator's words reached his brain. "What?" he gasped. "Jesus, the comet?" "Well, don't stand there shaking. Call Silver Springs." The night dispatcher of the division headquarters at Silver Springs listened to the message and telephoned Dave Mitchum, the new superintendent of the Colorado division. "The comet?" gasped Mitchum, his hand pressing the telephone receiver to his ear, his feet hitting the floor and throwing him upward right out of bed. "The engine's done for? The diesel?" "Yes, sir." Oh, God Almighty. What are we going to do?" Then, remembering his position, he added, "Well, send out the wrecking train." "I have." "Call the operator at Sherwood to hold all traffic." "I have." "What have you got on the sheet?" "The Army Freight Special westbound, but it's not due for about 4 hours. It's running late." "I'll be right down. Wait, listen, get Bill, Sandy, and Clarence down by the time I get there. There's going to be hell to pay." David Mitchum had always complained about injustice because, he said, he had always had bad luck. He explained it by speaking darkly about the conspiracy of the big fellows who would never give him a chance, though he did not explain just whom he meant by the big fellows. Seniority of service was his favorite topic of complaint and sole standard of value. He had been in the railroad business longer than many men who had advanced beyond him. This, he said, was proof of the social system's injustice, though he never explained just what he meant by the social system. He had worked for many railroads, but had not stayed long with any one of them. His employers had no specific misdeeds to charge against him, but had simply eased him out because, he said, Nobody told me to. Too often. He did not know that he owed his present job to a deal between James Taggart and Wesley Mouch. When Taggart traded to Mouch the secret of his sister's private life in exchange for a raise in rates, Mouch made him throw in an extra favor. By their customary rules of bargaining, which consisted of squeezing all one could out of any given trade. The extra was a job for Dave Mitchum, who was the brother-in-law of Claude Slagenhop, who was the president of the Friends of Global Progress, who were regarded by Mouch as a valuable influence on public opinion. James Taggart pushed the responsibility of finding a job for Mitchum onto Clifton Lokey. Lokey pushed Mitchum into a first job that came up, superintendent of the Colorado Division. When the man holding it quit without notice, the man quit when the extra diesel engine of Winston Station was given to Chuck Morrison's special. "What are we going to do?" cried Dave Mitchum, rushing half-dressed and groggy with sleep into his office, where the chief dispatcher, the train master, and the road foreman of engines were waiting for him. The three men did not answer. They were middle-aged men with years of railroad service behind them. A month ago, they were beginning to learn that things had changed and that it was dangerous to speak. "What in hell are we going to do?" "One thing is certain," said Bill Brent, the chief dispatcher. "We can't send a train into the tunnel with a coal-burning engine." Dave Mitchum's eyes grew sullen. He knew that this was one thought on all their minds. He wished Brent had not named it. "Well, where do we get a diesel?" he asked angrily. "We don't," said the road foreman. "But we can't keep the Comet waiting on a siding all night." "Looks like we'll have to," said the train master. "What's the use of talking about it, Dave? You know that there's no diesel anywhere on the division." "But Christ almighty, how do they expect us to move trains without engines?" "Miss Taggart didn't," said the road foreman. "Mr. Lokey does." "Bill," asked Mitchum, in the tone of pleading for a favor, "isn't there anything transcontinental that's due tonight with any sort of diesel?" "The first one to come," said Bill Brent implacably, "will be number 236, the fast freight from San Francisco, which is due at Winston at 7:18 a.m., he added. "That's the diesel closest to us at the moment. I've checked." "What about the Army special?" "Better not think about it, Dave. That one has priority over everything on the line, including the Comet, by order of the Army. They're running late as it is. Journal boxes caught fire twice. They're carrying munitions for the West Coast arsenals. Better pray that nothing stops them on your division. If you think we'll catch hell for holding the Comet, it's nothing to what we'll catch if we try to stop that special." They remained silent. The windows were open to the summer night, and they could hear the ringing of the telephone in the dispatcher's office downstairs. The signal lights winked over the deserted yards that had once been a busy division point. Mitchum looked toward the roundhouse, where the black silhouettes of a few steam engines stood outlined in the dim light. "The tunnel," he said, and stopped, "is 8 miles long," said the train master with a harsh emphasis. I was only thinking, snapped Mitchum. Better not think of it, said Brent softly. I haven't said anything. What was that talk you had with Dick Horton before he quit? The road foreman asked too innocently, as if the subject was irrelevant. Wasn't it something about the ventilation system in the tunnel being on the bum? Didn't he say that the tunnel was hardly safe nowadays, even for diesel engines? Why do you bring that up? Snapped Mitchum. I haven't said anything. Dick Horton, the division chief engineer, had quit 3 days after Mitchum's arrival. I thought I just mentioned it, the road foreman answered innocently. Look, Dave, said Bill Brent, knowing that Mitchum would stall for another hour rather than formulate a decision. You know that there's only one thing to do. Hold the Comet at Winston till morning. Wait for number 236. Have her diesel take the Comet through the tunnel, then let the Comet finish her run with the best coal burner we can give her on the other side. But how late will that make her? Brent shrugged. 12 hours, 18 hours, who knows? 18 hours for the Comet? Christ, that's never happened before. None of what's been happening to us has ever happened before, said Brent, with an astonishing sound of weariness in his brisk, competent voice. But they'll blame us for it in New York. They'll put all the blame on us. Brent shrugged. A month ago, he would have considered such an injustice inconceivable. Today, he knew better. I guess, said Mitchum miserably, I guess there's nothing else we can do. There isn't, Dave. Oh, God, why did this have to happen to us? Who is John Galt? It was 2:30 when the Comet, pulled by an old switch engine, jerked to a stop on a siding of Winston Station. Kip Chalmers glanced out with the incredulous anger at the few shanties on the desolate mountainside and at the ancient hovel of a station. Now what? What in hell are they stopping here for? He cried, and rang for the conductor. With the return of motion and safety, his terror had turned into rage. He felt almost as if it had been cheated by having been made to experience an unnecessary fear. His companions were still clinging to the tables of the lounge. They felt too shaken to sleep. How long? The conductor said impassively in answer to his question. Till morning, Mr. Chalmers. Chalmers stared at him, stupefied. We're going to stand here till morning? Yes, Mr. Chalmers. Here? Yes. But I have a rally in San Francisco this evening. The conductor did not answer. Why? Why do we have to stand? Why in hell? What happened? Slowly, patiently, with contemptuous politeness, the conductor gave him an exact account of the situation. But years ago, in grammar school, in high school, in college, Kip Chalmers had been taught that man does not and need not live by reason. Damn your tunnel, he screamed. Do you think I'm going to let you hold me up because of some miserable tunnel? Do you want to wreck vital national plans on account of a tunnel? Tell your engineer that I must be in San Francisco by evening and that he's got to get me there. How? That's your job, not mine. There is no way to do it. Then find a way, goddamn you. The conductor did not answer. Do you think I'll let your miserable technological problems interfere with crucial social issues? Do you know who I am? Tell that engineer to start moving. if he values his job. The engineer has his orders. Orders be damned. I give the orders these days. Tell him to start at once. Perhaps you'd better speak to the station agent, Mr. Chalmers. I have no authority to answer you as I'd like to, said the conductor, and walked out. Chalmers leaped to his feet. Say, Kit, said Lester Tuck uneasily, maybe it's true. Maybe they can't do it. They can if they have to, snapped Chalmers, marching resolutely to the door. Years ago in college, he had been taught that the only effective means to impel men to action was fear. In the dilapidated office of Winston Station, he confronted a sleepy man with slack, worn features and a frightened young boy who sat at the operator's desk. They listened in silent stupor to a stream of profanity such as they had never heard from any section gang. And it's not my problem how you get the train through the tunnel. That's for you to figure out, Chalmers concluded